Well, sharp focus is being thrown on the treatment of foreign nationals in South Africa with the forced removal of hundreds of people who'd been camping at the UN Refugee Agency in Cape Town last October. And today, refugees were forcibly removed from outside the Central Methodist Church in Cape Town. They want help to leave the country for a third country in the wake of recent xenophobic attacks and are currently sheltering at the church. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees has said that resettlement is not a realistic option for refugees and asylum seekers in South Africa right now. For more, let's chat to Wayne Ncube. He is the Deputy Director of Strategic Litigation at Lawyers for Human Rights. Good afternoon, Wayne. Thank you for joining us on the line today.
Good afternoon.
Wayne, we are clearly in a unique kind of situation where refugees are saying they're afraid of xenophobic attacks and want resettlement outside of South Africa. Can you put it all into context for us and tell us what is the legal status of the refugees being removed today within the human rights context in South Africa at this juncture?
Okay, so the removal is per a court order which was issued by the Cape Town High Court because there have been a lot of refugees who are protesting and staying in and around the church area in the Cape Town CBD. And there are a lot of different bylaws which basically prohibit such action. And so what the court order seeks to do is just to get compliance with the bylaws on the premise that it's affecting local businesses and violating bylaws. It's obviously then infringes on the refugees' ability to protest, but then it goes, the manner of their protest has gone above and beyond what's permitted by the laws.
Wayne, the court order that's being enforced today, what legal recourse, if at all, is still open to these refugees in particular?
So technically, they could go back to court and try and challenge the court order. There just isn't a very good legal argument to say that they should be allowed to carry on staying in the areas where they've been staying and causing the kind of disruptions that they've been doing. It's a very complicated situation because it's not a normal protest. We have a lot of people who are obviously displaced by the recent xenophobic violence, but a lot of other individuals have decided to join the protest because they believe they will be able to get resettlement, which obviously we know is from the UN is not an option. And so you have people who've been taking a stand for months, and at this point the authorities have given as much latitude as they could, and now the laws have to be enforced. So there's no legal argument for them to carry on staying where they've been staying.
Wayne, from your experience, I just want to garner your thoughts on this. What are some of our country's best options now to resolve a refugee impasse of this nature?
So the difficulty with this situation is that it doesn't have any real parallel to other countries. South Africa doesn't really take care of and provide welfare or social assistance towards asylum seekers and refugees. There aren't camps and those sort of provisions like there are in other countries like Kenya, America, the States. Canadian government provides welfare. South Africa just isn't in a position to do that. So it's really about negotiating with the refugees and negotiating with their leaders and getting to a point of understanding. I think there's a lot of confusion about what the outcome of this protest action can lead to, and that is obviously something that the United Nations, along with the Department of Home Affairs and city officials, will have to do and negotiate some sort of practical solution. Amongst that would be maybe dealing with some of the issues that actually plague refugees here, and there are a lot including...
Yes, and that's exactly it. That really cuts to the heart of the question, the heart of the issue, Wayne, because globally, awareness and integration of refugees has been one of the most difficult international policy issues, but it's not uniquely a South African problem. What would you say are some of the major challenges facing refugees and asylum seekers in our country from a legal perspective at this juncture, Wayne?
So I think the biggest problem for refugees and asylum seekers is the current collapse of the asylum system. There are a lot of different problems within our asylum system, from the closure and lack of access to many of the refugee reception offices. In fact, the refugee reception office in Cape Town, there was a court order now close to 2 years ago which called for that office to be reopened, and it still has not been reopened. And so there's a lack of service provision to asylum seekers, and that renders them vulnerable, and that makes it difficult for them to be able to get into the job market, to look after themselves since they're not receiving any aid, for them to get schooling for their children, healthcare, and all sorts of other issues. And the manner in which asylum claims are being determined, there are many reports which talk about the systemic issues in the status determination process. And at this moment, most people who want their refugee claims determined properly have to go to the High Court. And obviously that's something that's very expensive. And most middle-class people cannot access the High Court, let alone refugees and migrants who normally are in a very precarious situation, also in terms of socio-economic standing. So all these issues obviously are then made worse by the recent amendments to the Refugees Act, which came into effect on the 1st of January. So we're now 2 months into it. And some of these amendments, for instance, call for applications and status to be abandoned after a month if you don't renew within a month. But it's in the same context where a lot of these reception offices where you have to renew your papers are simply not open. So refugees have, and asylum seekers have a lot of different issues that they struggle with in the country, and there are a lot of legitimate issues that they're protesting. And that's why this has to be a deliberative process where there has to be some sort of solution offered by the different parties to say, this is how we'll make things better, and it will require the government to step in and offer a position to say this is how we can make integration possible.
Wayne Ncube is the Deputy Director of Strategic Litigation at Lawyers for Human Rights. Thank you for sharing your insights with us on the SABC News channel.